Mr. Nolan Bauerle, thank you so much for joining me today and being a playable character in a sea of non-playable characters. And what better person to have on than yourself, someone I've learned so much from. And I know we're going to talk about some non-playable characters today. So thank you, sir, for being on.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's been a treat watching you get all these shows together and systematize your output and all that. So it's been great.
Yeah, no, and I just even from the beginning, I remember a couple of years ago, I remember finding your show. I remember messaging you. You're been doing work in the industry for a long time, and then you had the breakup you started, a handful of years ago. And for whatever reason, I jived with it right away, and it was just seeking truth, but also laughing at the system, hypocrisy, frameworks for life that really resonated with me. And that's like I was talking to you. I want to talk about frameworks and why they're so important because it's something that I've talked to you a lot about over time, just, personally, whether it's our children, things maybe we wish we would have known as we were kids growing up. You talk about Jungian psychology a lot. You talk about Scott Adams a lot. There's a lot of people that are mentors to you or mentors to me. And so I jived with you right away and looked at someone that was like, wow, this guy, he gets it. And he's, laughing at the system. And, as the more Nolan laughs, it seems the more the system crumbles. So I would love for us to dive into these frameworks and how you kind of came about all this. It was just something naturally as a kid growing up, but how you came to be the way that you are.
Um, I'd say, I guess, just being, laughing at the system. I guess that really was coming from the point of view of someone who took it seriously at one point. I was like a lawyer, wow, a politician, wow. There was a
Yeah.
time in my life when I definitely did think that way, and that's where I got a background as a lawyer, and never really practiced as a lawyer, but I went to law school and then had a professional career within politics. So one of the systems that I used, and this is even what brought me to Scott Adams, for example, was I could tell already in 2015 that Trump was the right sauce politically. I was already into Bitcoin. I had already declared in my own world that politics weren't going to fix anything. It was already down to the root system. And that's where my worldview switched from politics, which you can see in this image here, to a Bitcoin worldview, right? So, speaking of frameworks and systems, the way I do my show every day, people say, how do you put out a daily 1 hour show? And how do you prepare it all? And how do you do it live? And all these things. Well, when your worldview is a consistent Bitcoin worldview, and that's really what Bitcoin offers as a framework, right? You can really identify incentive systems and understand why people make choices and why they are made the way they are. And it gives you a framework to understand the whole world. So for me to do a show every day, I just filter the clown world through the Bitcoin worldview lens. I just sort of bounce it off. And the answer I get back is usually very funny and simple, and it shows how this thing is decaying over time, and we can see the decay in real time. That's why absurdity has blended with reality now, and that's sort of where that stuff comes from. So yeah, it that the framework thing, I got it from Scott Adams. Really, when I saw the frameworks that I use to go into Bitcoin and leave politics, like not consider it anymore, it was really because I thought Trump would change the way politics were conducted. Now, where I got things wrong was when the brainwashing really kicked in after Trump won. I thought I was ready to let it all go. I said, "Oh, politics are stupid. It's just 100% Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
now. I don't even have to pay attention to this. Trump will expose clown world." In the end, people are going to love this guy. He's so funny. They're not going to keep it so that they hate him. Like, what a tragedy that people hate him to begin with. That was all fake. What I didn't understand was they would go with Charlottesville and they would go with, all the other hoaxes that got thrown at him. And to me, that was the reason I found Scott Adams, because he could explain this stuff, and he went on his own quest to figure out how information was being formulated, how persuasion worked, and that's really where I got the idea to do this show and to really embrace his principal idea, which is systems over goals, and to use these frameworks to try to understand most things out there. And the NPC one has been a great framework. It's one that you've made your show
Yeah.
off of, and it works great. I use it for a lot of things. It's part of how I understand the world now. It is a video game. That's a framework that I use every day, right? You're out there trying to collect
Yes.
like Mario. as a main player, you're trying to collect the coins. You can get extra lives. You can get stuff with it, right? There's no difference. Bitcoin is in-game money for main player characters, and that's a theme that I repeat regularly in my show. And it's a good system to work by, right?
Yeah.
That's what stacking sats is all about.
Truly. And it's, there's a million. So I have, this is just so the audience knows over time. This is, we'll have to have Nolan on over time because I have a show sheet. You're the only person I think in Bitcoin, my notes app. I have just a notes app for Nolan. So a note for Nolan. So just taking notes over time for the shows you've done over the last, whatever it was, 2 or 3 years, 4 years. So that's how much I've taken from your show. So this show could be hours and hours long. But one of the big things, you kind of just touched on this, is follow the money, and it explains a lot. For decades it explains a lot, but especially for people that are new, maybe last 4 years, it's a real wake-up call to them, and they've moved from being a normie or non-playable character into, hey, I'm critically thinking. Could you kind of touch on just whether it's the Jungian analysis, but more importantly the follow the money analysis, where so much of society was built on follow the science, follow the experts, sources say, and there's no verification at all. And you always say, well, hey, if you just followed the money, you'd get a lot closer to truth. So could you kind of elaborate on that filter
Yeah,
you frame
yeah.
out?
Well, that I guess that goes back to being able to produce the show. First of all, has that you have to have a consistent worldview, and you start it with, in my case, with that Bitcoin layer of reality that you can bounce things off of, or a Bitcoin filter. But that's the follow the money one, because that explains incentives. One of the things that I've learned is that we're not as rational as we think we are, and we're not really rational creatures. And we teach money in terms of mathematics, and it's this rational thing, and that if you just put your mind to it, why can't people save money, right? And all of these different frameworks that they fail to realize that although there's numbers involved, we're not talking about math. It's nothing to do with math. It's almost all psychology. In the same way that we think we're smart because we can rationalize decisions, well, that's usually after the fact. We make decisions because of our fears and our wants, and that's really all of it, right? It's not really a lot of rationality inside of that. Now, what you're afraid of, definitely there is something called the faculty of cause and effect, and your ability to be rational. There is a faculty of rationality in your head, but it's about what is a risk, what is a reward. And so incentives are the most important thing, right? So incentives really do underline why most people are making these decisions. So you can put that as sort of your layer one. After that, if that doesn't explain everything, and it only just gives you a general direction of what ballpark you're in. You don't really know where you're at yet, but at least you've been able to understand what you're dealing with, and what direction you're headed. After that, you've got to apply a couple principles. One of them, in my case, that I always like to apply is incompetence over malice, right? I sort of put that
Yep.
there. It's an important one because that will let you know, or that gives you the presumption that people are innocent, I guess you can say, right? We still owe each other the presumption of innocence. And I'd even say this to all the libtards out there. Most of them are not, like, it's not that they're missing information or they have a low IQ or they're stupid. It's opposite. They're usually really smart. They're smart people. They're generally more well read and
Yeah.
all of these things. But that's exactly why they get blinded by the incompetent side. Like, what kind of a doctor should be good at managing finances? That's a lot of stuff to ask for a doctor, right? If you're saying to a doctor, you've also got to be good at money and risk management, these are different skill sets. They're not the same thing at all. And there is a presumption amongst a lot of these people that they can do everything because they were good at being a scientist, and that's not the way it works, right? Making money and being a scientist are completely different skill sets. So usually what you're seeing is someone who thinks they have their skills in whatever field that translate directly to money, and then, or whatever else, and you can see the failure there. And usually failure and incompetence will make more sense to you. From there, you can start to just understand biology is usually a good filter, right? Most people are doing what they do to show off so they can procreate, right? That's generally pretty foundational to explaining our behaviors and things like that. And finally, just we're addicted to dopamine as well, right? I think of most of these things as dopamine delivery systems. I think of the media as a dopamine delivery system. They're drug dealers. I think of the mainstream media as drug dealers. But I also think of what we do in Bitcoin as drug dealing in a sense. We're addictive creatures by habit. We can't avoid that. That's the operating system. we train ourselves to find dopamine, to get away from fears, to get money because that takes away this problem, and you get dopamine from getting it, so and you want to get banged. So it's all these different filters that would explain why people do things the way they do them.
We want to thank our sponsor. This show is presented by Bitcoin Trading Cards, an orange pill in a pack, making talking about things that normally make you want to cry fun and easy. The scarcest and most educational cards to ever exist. Available now.
Now, I use these things to sort of weed out. I don't want to use the conspiracy theory word because most of them are true. So it's not that's not what I mean. But to eliminate the irrational day-to-day fear that I worry some Bitcoiners are crippled by, right? That they're worried about whatever can happen to this by the state, or the decay of America, or all of these things, right? So that's something I've tried to bring to the show from the very beginning, is that I could sense a lot of anxieties. That's why it's called The Breakup. That's why we use the psychological frame. That's why it's not a show about the breakdown in the news. It's about a relationship ending. And I've tried to stay true to those frames from the beginning. And that's sort of how we anchor the show. We're in a relationship with the political system we have. We love money. We all love money. Who doesn't love money? It's your everything that I just said means you're hardwired to love it, right? Because the dopamine and the banging and the babies, and you want all this stuff. So we're hardwired to love it. We want it, but you got to know what you're in love with. You got to know who the partner is, and this, crazy skank that we're in a relationship has got to fucking go. She's ruining our life. The US dollar, this old ratted out lady, has got to go. And people it's hard for them, right? Especially patriotic Americans. It's always been a blind spot, which is what is, Trump's going to come across a lot of this stuff if he does win. That's one of the frameworks. I like to use predictions as a framework for the show as well, as a sort of test. If we knew what we were talking about when we thought about where this would all lead to. And that's one that I like to, what happens next. You can use this as one of my new frames, by the way, for all the stupid people in your life, right? That are like, did you see what just happened? You can use this video game or movie frame where you're like, don't you see how the story ends yet? And then make them try to describe to you how the story, like with Biden and Bitcoin and America and the dollar, just have them try to explain it to you. It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. They can't do it. They're like, oh, they inevitably end up with, we have to kill all these people, and there's got to be like re-education camps. They have to go there. Their brains there's no other way they can get out of what they've been hypnotized into believing. So it's like full on. They're like waiting for CBDCs. They're waiting for the government to say your money can work if you have enough vaccines or not. Like, they actually have already accepted that future without even realizing it, right? They've been persuaded in these ways. So it's watching them try to talk their way out of it is one of my new hobbies. It's one of my new ways of causing cognitive dissonance in these people, right? I used to do the one that worked for the elections for a long time was when people try to explain to me that there was an insurrection in America, I would play dumb and say, I didn't hear about that.
It's a great one.
I don't, what was that? Oh, and then make them describe the insurrection and then just ask the most basic questions, right? So there weren't guns. I didn't know that. I thought there were guns. They can't explain it. But you can do the same trick with the future. They can't answer. It's a dimensional advantage Bitcoiners have. And we can apply that asymmetrically to people.
It's so funny. There's just so many offshoots to that. The one thing, so that frame that you've been using for, the past year, it's funny because I've been recently just taking it a step further and just saying, because the beauty of that framework is it's a framework, you can ramp it up or ramp it back down, right? Like you can keep, so I would just tend to ramp it up. I'm like, well, any person who even remotely thought, you had a thought in your mind that the election wasn't verifiable or creditable, you should be in prison. Like you should be in prison for the rest of your life. There should be 10, 20, 30 million people that are in prison right now. And people are like, well, I mean, it's like,
that's a good one. Hard, yeah. Anyone who doubted it is jail, immediate jail. We can't afford this.
Done.
We can't afford it. Yeah,
you're done.
Too dangerous. Dangerous to our democracy.
Dangerous to democracy. Yeah. It's just democracy dies in darkness. That's
it's dangerous. So dangerous.
But so how the humor aspect again? You do it truly is cathartic in a way, right? Like you do such a great job at laughing and, producing a show, but like laughing at what's going on. And like part of you, if you're not going to laugh, you're going to cry about what's going on. So you have to choose one of the two roads in a way. So you do a great job of that. But, for me, as a kid, I mean, 20 years ago, if you would have told me things would be crumbling like this around us and people be waking up to the extent that they are, and we're looking around and we have people like us and they're vocal, and you're seeing like, wow, there's actually people out there fighting and doing the Elon Musk of the world, people that are at this pulpit that are saying a lot of the things that we think. 20 years ago, that was so far from being even a thought in your mind. What do you think is like, what's changed in your mind that all of a sudden you have these people out there kind of doing our bidding in a way where I'm like, I thought I was going to be the guy at the stake 20 years ago as a kid. Like, I'm going to be in this fight. I'm going to literally be in a fight for truth. And here we are with people all around us waking up. What's changed in your mind?
Yeah, the internet, by that conversion of all sort of matter into bits and bytes, the way it happened,
Mm-hmm.
and flattening the world in that sense, broke almost every system we have. I mean, it broke the news. There's an old Philip K. Dick hallucination, right? So Philip K. Dick, the writer of Minority Report and what became Blade Runner, Man in the High Castle, science fiction writer. He had some hallucinogenic episode in his life. I don't believe drug induced, more like on the verge of suicide or something like that, like a really tough time in his life. And he had this sort of dream that we were, of what humans were. We were all basically individual computer coils, he described it, in a sort of galactic brain. But one of the problems was the memory recall function was broken. And that's why we were in this inability to sort of sync up. So if you would make us like a simulation, right? If we were living in a simulation, and people would say, well, it would be impossible because we would all notice. Well, we can watch the same tennis match, you and I. Mm-hmm. We can watch the same video and we can disagree about what we saw, ball in, ball out, very easily. So we can all look at the same information. We can all, even look at the 2020 election. We have half of the US population who legitimately believes they survived an insurrection in America. So you can distort stories and narratives very easily when you do have this top-down information structure. I'm a big fan of the Bright Insight show. I think that's what it's called. He's been on Joe Rogan a couple of times. He's big into the Atlantis stuff. I've been big into the Atlantis stuff since I was a college student. It's a lifestyle thing. I just find it fun. Ancient civilizations. If you put a gun to my head, I don't know if I believe half of it, but I love the stuff. I love the old stories about where did Atlantis come from and pre-civilizations and all these kinds of things. So there's a whole thread out there of that type of content that I find, attractive. So we just saw the other day, this guy came out with a study of Göbekli Tepe, which is that thing that sort of shuffled the whole deck of our history and where we came from because of how old it is. It's like from 12,000 years ago. So if we could build Göbekli Tepe, that means the pyramids are probably older than the time of the flood, right? And all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but what we found out is, he just found out why, we've only explored 5% of Göbekli Tepe since we discovered it in the 90s, and it hasn't progressed. It's just been 5% ever since. Like, what's going on there, right? So this guy did an investigation. It turns out the WEF obviously took control of the property and have not done anything. And now they're out there pumping this idea that we want to let future generations dig it up. We want to let future generations explore. We don't want to do it. We don't want to take all the fun. We don't want all the fun, right? But it literally completely changes history. So, what you see is history has been manipulated. I think inevitably Bitcoin is our only hope to break all these incentive structures, to find out, to get rid of our amnesia, really, to find out what's going on and where we came from. I believe most of what's in the Bible is true, but it's missing a lot of context. Right. I think it more or less accurately describes what happened in its own language. I think you've got to use your imagination too. But that's the world we're heading into now, right? And that's one of the things that Bitcoin has broken. When you said you couldn't imagine yourself thinking about these things a few years ago, it's going to get way weirder. Way weirder. Like we've only figured out the news. History is much crazier than the news. It's way faker. Not even close. So I agree. We would never have thought like this just a few years ago, but we're not even close to how much it's going to change even from here, right? I think we're going to get into things that are going to be a lot of fun and are going to
Mhm.
completely upend our idea of scientists and all their, oh, the monkeys.
Yeah,
You're a monkey. You're just a smart ape, okay? Don't worry about it.
unreal. The internet, like you said, I think I go back to that as well as the answer. You know, like our society again, like Normieville, just constantly focuses on social media being a bad thing and internet being this bad thing, or whatever. And I go back to, and you talked about this a lot, Mike Benz saying the internet, in a way, our the U.S. Department of State was so busy with color revolutions around the world, using the internet to their own advantage, that they forgot about what was going on inside the borders here. And 10 years ago, oops, like we realized we need to point the guns inward, because these people are too smart and they have too much information. The toothpaste out of the tube now. And that's why it feels like that's why there's so much back and forth and tug and, pull and tug on both sides. And, weaponizing the language of the people, weaponizing the goodness of people. Again, like, people are inherently good, like you said earlier. And, I remember my grandfather 20 years ago, or when Obama got voted in the first time, he was staunch Democrat, union, and when all of a sudden it was Hillary's job, and then Obama just came in last second, that's when he flipped. That's when, like, the light went off in his head of, whoa. Like, those are generations. He died a few years ago at 88 years old. Those are the generations where he was like, yeah, Brandon, like, we just believe Walter Cronkite was telling us the truth. Why would we have any reason to believe that wasn't the case? Like, we're the handshake generation. That's in essence what he told me 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And I'll never forget that. And now the younger generations are like, I've seen you guys get screwed so many times. Like, we're done. I'm done. Like, anything old, like, that's gone. Like, we're not doing this anymore. You touched on, so I'd love for you to touch on any of that, but also, like, Ethereum. I wanted to touch on this Ethereum thing. You predicted this like a year ago or whatever, 2 years ago. You've been saying this, like, Ethereum needs to be 1,000 times a scam, 10,000 times a scam. And lo and behold, what do we have? Complete 180 in the government, everything going on. And now here we are at Ethereum center stage, looking like, who knows, it might take out Wall Street someday. So you have to be relishing in that a little bit.
Well, it's a fun, it's one of those predictions that I don't know if that one, I mean, that one's for fun, really.
Right.
But indeed, I think that I think the trust that old generation had made sense for a lot of their operations, a lot of the ways they did things. It made sense to do things, indeed, the handshake thing, the face-to-face. I think all that stuff will continue to work in the future. It's just what we've created with financial engineering. Again, it's that framework thing. I think I don't have any problem with crypto, but again, going back to the worldview thing, people ask me, because I produced the Consensus CoinDesk shows for years and a lot of crypto there, and
Yep.
I moved over and just produced the Bitcoin Magazine shows for the last few years, and that's different. And people always ask me, well, why would you make, what's the difference? Especially people who don't know anything about the industry. And I said, well, the Bitcoin Magazine show is like a worldview show because it's about Bitcoin. You can talk about anything under the sun, which is why we've gotten all these politicians over the years.
Right.
Like we had RFK and Vivek last year, and maybe we'll get Trump this year. We'll see. But we do have RFK and Vivek again this year. So there's always been this, not to, they have those guys at a crypto show. But what I mean is crypto really takes a worldview that freezes what's going on right now and says, okay, the best and brightest were financial engineers for a whole generation. And we're just going to make that job a little harder. We're actually going to increase the IQ required. So now you need a Series 7 license. It'd also be great if you can run an MEV front running node and understand how to get miner extracted value when you're quant trading your shitcoin, right? Like that becomes the most important thing. Now, I do honestly love Ethereum as a playground to have learned about how to secure different contractual relationships. We're going to take those over to Bitcoin. We couldn't really understand them all, but you're going to see a lot of this stuff play out in Bitcoin. And we needed a place to do it. So I'll always appreciate that it was a great testing ground and we saw its limitations pretty early. Now, everything else around it, that marketing thing, I think, because Bitcoiners actually want to end a world where financial engineers are the highest paid people and have the best jobs and are the best and brightest of their generation. Bitcoiners, I think, when you start talking about the Austrian economic school and the psychological engine behind our economy and how we get fruitful, commercial relationships, when incentives were more aligned in your grandfather's generation and the handshake meant that you were securing a relationship, we can get back to that using things like Bitcoin, simply because you're going to align incentives such that, you become good at making a chair. You don't have to know any financial engineering stuff. You can be a cattleman and be, we want to see the cattleman rich again, right? We want to see cattle rancher as like the best job. And then these guys can just use the simple financial primitives which exist using Bitcoin and pieces of, things we can do with Bitcoin, like collateralize it and lend it. I think that's all going to happen, right? You're not going to have to be a genius to figure it all out. It'll all be pretty straightforward. But you're going to be able to create a situation where the best and brightest are good at other things. Now, when it comes to psychologically changing people's mind about what the best and brightest job is, it's great watching Wall Street sell Ethereum. It's great. I want them to go much deeper into the stack. I want them out there selling Cardano. I want like the top stock traders that everyone thinks were so great, Yeah, you got to get in on this AXA, bro. Get the AXA, I got a yield over on the DEX, I'm farming the shit out of it. It would be great to see. It would be great. Now, there will be a world where there are still financial engineers, and I hope they continue to be well paid. It just doesn't have to be the best job that sucks up all the best people, because that really in the end is the problem with America. I mean, all the smart people stopped paying attention. That's what's different right now. That's what is different this time around with Trump. It looks like only the stupid people are left saying, Biden behind closed doors, guys. Once the doors close, he's a genius. You didn't see it because the doors weren't closed.
Those cameras are off.
You gotta go behind closed doors, and then he's suddenly so smart. But I know, so it's behind closed doors only. So that's one of the things that Trump has going for him is that indeed the smart people, including the financial engineers, have stood up and are starting to publicly voice. So it's chaos. We love it. The fiat apocalypse has to look like this. It has to look like an entertaining race to the bottom, and
yeah,
it couldn't get better.
It really couldn't. It's a comedy playing out. I mean, like, again, I was, 15 years ago, I remember it was like, maybe it's 2007. I was in college or something. I'm watching Glenn Beck. He was on like CNN headline news, some random channel before he went to Fox News. And he was reading like Thomas Paine's Common Sense, or he had written, I don't know if he had written his version. And I was like, dude, this guy gets it. There was like no one on TV on main legacy news. I was like, dude, this guy gets it. Like, he gets the Constitution, the founding, maybe 2006. I don't even know when it was. And I'd followed him ever since, but like, he was talking about things that were so like beyond, like, a lot of this stuff. Like, even today, people are like, oh, it's conspiracy. And it's like, dude, all this stuff has played out. Like, everything the guy's talked about for 15 years has played out. But it was like, it was thrust into this red versus blue spectrum. It was like, well, he's a conservative. He's a red guy. And it was just like, what is going on? And that's like, oh, wait, really woke me up. And we've talked about this over time, but it was just like, whoa, the money's broken. It's not this red versus blue thing. And that's what I think he was getting to. And even he himself has not broken out of it necessarily to that point where he's still in that red blue dichotomy. And you can even see, as a Bitcoiner, you kind of leave that and you look back and you're like, how do you guys not get that? I mean, you just alluded to it. At what point in the timeline here do we start seeing people that are like, whoa, like, you still don't get Bitcoin? Like, how are you okay? Like, at what point?
When you say the money's broken, I get what you mean. And
yeah.
I can agree with it as a euphemism and all that, right? And I get it as a meme, the money's broken, fix the world. So I'm not disagreeing with that. But the truth is, the money is not broken at all. It's working exactly as intended. I mean, literally exactly as intended. And
oh, man.
What I've come to understand, and this is, I guess, the worldview frames and what can allow you to see around the corner a little bit, is that once you understand that we're not really logical, and that even though we're dealing with math, our numbers, we've confused ourselves by thinking this is about math. It's really a psychological engine, really based on our fears and our wants. If you knew that, and if you understand what we've learned from understanding Bitcoin just for the last 15 years, right? It's nothing, right? What we've learned already from just this 15 years of Bitcoin is that if you can control money, you can actually define reality for people. I mean, literally define reality. the power to get root key access into people's brains to hit the buttons of fear and want are very simple once you understand that. And to imagine that no one has figured that truth out, which is apparent to anyone who studied Bitcoin for even a short amount of time. Most of us were understanding this in the early Bitcoin days. By the time I was into Bitcoin in, working every day in Bitcoin in 2013, it had already been thought of, right? I was already referencing other
Amazing.
people saying, oh shit, Bitstein figured all this shit out like already, right? This is all known. And what we understood right away is that you can actually hypnotize people at a mass level by using these levers. And if someone figured that out, which I don't imagine isn't the case a few hundred years ago, then the power that comes from that is almost immeasurable. And so when I see people getting divided, understand that I do believe that those are buttons you can push. And once you understand the two root key access buttons, fear and wanting, the amount of extendable control you have over what people think is very simple. I mean, you can predict it. It's prompt engineering. It's the same thing that I do every day with ChatGPT. I know exactly what I'm going to get out. Like I have an idea. That's why I prompt it, right? I understand a prompt will produce this result. And once you understand the whole thing as a prompt engineering exercise, I think AI has taught us that, right? It's why I always laugh and be like, when is AI going to pass humans? When is it going to be smarter? We're not that smart. And so how hard is it going to be? I don't think it's that smart either. I don't think it will be smarter than us, but waiting for a sign of intelligence from us, the thing we created. Okay, good luck. Any day now, right? Any day. So
yeah, no,
I don't,
that's so fascinating. And again, like I want to touch on AI in a minute quick with you, but is that only possible though? So like these feedback loops that you're referring to and what you're, these frameworks and the feedback loops, and is that only possible to see with Bitcoin? Because even the gold community, still a lot of them don't get it, right? It's still a fiat mindset because eventually you have to turn the gold back into fiat because again, gold can't final settle across.
I think Christianity was close to it, right? I mean, Christianity and Bitcoin merge well. I think Islam had it too, probably. I'm not an expert, but I think it did, right? But my understanding of Christianity anyway is,
right.
What did Jesus get in trouble for? What got him killed? He was complaining that the temple, the spiritual center, the engine that made that thing run was a shit financial system. And so he went into the nerve center because that's where the spiritual pollution was coming from, and then flipped the table and broke the game. And so that's what got him killed. I mean, that's it. That was the game. That's what he did, right? So it's not so different than what Bitcoiners are up to. So I think you could have seen it before, but Satoshi hadn't invented money yet. Money didn't exist before him. We had facsimiles. We had combinations of technology. If you read any of the Nick Szabo stuff on the history of money, the shells plus a thing, usually put a gun. Boom, you got money, right? The US dollar, you get the Aramco deal with the Saudis and the oil, and then you get the aircraft carriers, and you get the nukes, and suddenly you have money, right? You have a global reserve currency. But you need all this tech together in a stack that can implement it. And if you can call that money, sure. I mean, sure, it did it a little while, and it was okay. The US dollar, when it started, I guess, don't ask the Germans, but some people will say it worked fine, right? And so you had things that did fine for money, gold even, a lot going on there to make money out of it, but it worked. But it truthfully didn't exist in this simplistic form until Bitcoin. So because we invented it, you can even interpret the Bible through a Bitcoin lens. It's like I just did. It's very simple to say, well, Jesus got killed for being a Bitcoiner. Like you can literally say that without much pause and hesitation, right? It's within the spirit of what everyone in Bitcoin is doing. So, I don't know enough about the other religions to say, I can only judge by the results. I bet you Judaism has, these are pretty successful people. So, there's probably something in there too. But it's to me, it's not only Bitcoin. You can do it with other worldviews. Now, the ones that would limit you are like the scientific theory of evolution, because it only goes back to when the history became fake, right? When they said, "Oh, everyone's from Africa and you're all monkeys," actually, and some of you are more monkey than others. I mean, that's what they said. That was their
Right.
crazy theory, right? And it was detestable from the start. It was a disgusting, detestable idea from the start. So if you use that as your worldview, you were always going to come out with detestable results because it was a shit, inaccurate, stupid view from the beginning, and is responsible for I don't know how much mischief in the world. So
Mhm.
so there was definitely, you got to be careful about what you use as your worldview. I don't think Bitcoin is the only one. I think that in the future there will be non-Bitcoin worldviews, but minimally, right? They won't. They probably will be very peripheral.
And,
I think it
and
can consume all religions, basically,
yeah,
or
for sure.
merge well with them.
So in saying that, I got a couple of quick questions, and then do a little lightning round to end here in a few minutes. What do you like? I don't know how much you've seen the Jeff Booth and George Gammon over the last year and a half, just kind of going back and forth. They'll have, they'll go on a show together, or they'll tweet back and forth, and basically at the end of the day, they believe the same thing. Gammon's big thing is, I just don't believe, I'm not to that point, Jeff, where I think humans are going to change that much by using Bitcoin. And I somewhat agree with him in this sense, where Bitcoin changes you. It's changed me. I know it's changed your life. It's changed many people that I know in Bitcoin, right? So it's part true, part not. Meaning that the first part's true, but then in the end, I think 100 years from now, are we in the same fourth turning aspect where the people that didn't grow up with this fight, with this struggle, seeing this go on, do they revert back to playing funny games 100 years from now? What is
No.
your thought
So,
with that?
so I did write a science fiction book about what happens to
Yep.
Bitcoin in a fourth turning, but that's another story. Now, so the problem with George is that he's arguing the sentimental side of Bitcoin with the sentimentalists. There was a time in my own life where I also believed, like George, that every pleb with a wallet and every shithole country in the world was how we were going to make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was a fake idea. It was never real. And look, Bitcoin is not going to make, Bitcoin is not, fairness is not a real thing, and Bitcoin is not here to be fair. It's
Mm-hmm.
not what's happening. All right. It's not, unfortunately, it's not what's happening. Okay. COVID taught me that we forked as a life form. We forked. We're two different species now. And now I don't think it forked with George Gammon and Jeff Booth. That's not what I mean at
Right.
all, right? That's not what I mean. George is out there arguing about why don't the people of Argentina care, right? Why isn't
Right.
that happening? That's not what this predicts. That's not what I'm seeing in Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I speak of frameworks, I've always looked at professional human capital migration into Bitcoin as a really good indicator of where things are headed and where to predict things are going with Bitcoin. The original Bitcoiners, the cryptographers, the cypherpunks, right? They're a unique set of people. They knew first because they were looking for this and waiting for this. So separate them as just a unique cross section of people, but they left their careers immediately to go in Bitcoin at scales that you don't even hear about because they all launched shitcoins and disappeared. Right, so
Right.
leave them be. The next people that came were the political people because they understood what was happening in America at the time, and you saw a lot of people leave the Ron Paul 2012 campaign in
Mm-hmm.
America and go right into Bitcoin. These were Silk Road users. This is the class of Ross.
Yeah.
This is a very special time in Bitcoin as well. But again, you're getting another unique section of humans. The Wall Street people come next, and it's an important thing that happens because these are the non-sentimental Wall Street people. These are the people who want to make
Mm.
fucking money, and they've destroyed Wall Street as a money-making vehicle. They took the risk out of it. It's the porno analogy that I use. They turned it into rubber condom robot sex that wasn't real anymore. And some people wanted to fucking bang. They
Yeah.
wanted it, but they wanted the real thing. So Bitcoin sucked this real risk management person, these people, this archetype into the scene at a very early time. Now remember that because that starts predicting where things are headed. Bitcoin's destiny is to capture the Wall Street piece of it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's the metric of wealth for wealthy people, and the other piece is the energy one. And you're seeing the energy industry come in now. That's the next thing you have to
Yeah.
use. So we can talk about remittances and people in the Philippines and India and all that stuff, and it's this many trillion. That's not what's happening. What's happening is the energy industry needs to understand what it's doing. It needs a metric to organize itself. Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
is basically the measuring stick. It's the metric system for
Yeah.
wealth and markets that matter, like energy. And so once you see, just like what ended yesterday, the Saudi oil money being measured in the dollar, that was the most important financial market of our era, and it ended. The
Mm-hmm.
new most important metric will be just the price of energy and in Bitcoin. And once you start measuring things in Bitcoin, measuring how wealthy you are in Bitcoin, and measuring how much energy markets, what's going on in energy in Bitcoin, then you've actually won that psychological game. If it's the measuring stick, then all things will gear towards it. So it never mattered how many people held Bitcoin. It never mattered if a bunch of plebs had a wallet in Argentina. God bless the ones who do, and I hope more come and watch my show, and I'll help you figure it out. Watch your show, and you'll help them figure it out. But we've been trying this stuff for years. There's no excuse anymore. It's not an IQ problem. It's an idiocy NPC problem. Hypnotized people. There's not a lot we can do for them. The only way to help these people is to punch them in the face, but not everyone wants to get punched in the face, right? So you can't go around punching people in the face because it hurts. So you got to leave them with their plans and whatever it is they have in mind. And the George Gammons, once they see that the earnings reports at BlackRock are actually just measured in Bitcoin, because the US dollar food stamp trash token doesn't work anymore to do that stuff, and then you're going to have a big change, and that's where it's headed. Right, the trash token is not the food stamp ECB money is not.
I
It's
love
not
how
where things are. It's not all
someone
that,
on
right?
was it
So
yesterday?
once
Someone,
rich people, so that's where it's headed, basically, and it's the thing where Bitcoin makes the world fair. I mean, it will allow us to allocate capital better.
mm-hmm.
And I think we all want to solve the poverty problem, and no one wants to see everyone dying. But honestly, look, it's mostly going to be UBI, CBDCs, seed oil, cooked bugs for those fucking people. There's nothing I can do about it, right? In the end, they're going to be the prey of the same. We're not going to be able to kill all these companies immediately. So the pharmaceutical company will take their pound of flesh. And I don't know how much we can stop it this cycle. In 100 years, we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
In 100 years, I foresee actually the one. So in my story, the one challenge to Bitcoin as the organizing principle of the economy becomes synthetic wombs. That owning life and being able to control the life that you create as like a type of normal slave is more desirable than acquiring Bitcoin. Not necessarily, but that's part of the conflict, or the beginning of that conflict, that there's a new organizing principle. Because it's not, they don't even think about money anymore, because Bitcoin had solved that, right? So in my story, there's only time for money left. And in the future, what's more valuable than time and money is owning humans. They couldn't stop the appetite for it, right? There was just an appetite, not to be a slave, obviously,
Right.
but to own. Yeah. It was just an attempt at figuring out what it could be, and synthetic wombs would get you there, right?
It's fascinating. So in saying that, before we do a little lightning round to end here, what I've read the what you have on the screen back there, Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, Bitcoiner's Guide to the 2024 presidential elections. I've not read the murder mysteries though. So I still have to read.
They're coming. Yeah. Well, I'll be issuing a token this summer with RGB on RGB++. So it'll be a Bitcoin token. So I'll have to spend sats to mint it. And what it will be is, if you get the book, you'll get a royalty token, right? So you buy the book on Amazon, you get a royalty token. And then if the book sells, I take the sales and I put that into a Bitcoin pot, and your token will allow you to withdraw your percentage of that accumulated Bitcoin. So it's like a buyback scheme where early fans are awarded with stake on the future royalties, but I'll buy it back from you. And the longer you wait, the more revenue, the more it costs me to get it back. So it could help people earn Bitcoin, which we want to do.
Do you have, so besides that, are you working on anything else in that regard of literary works, other management
Yeah.
guides you're thinking of?
Yeah. So I've got two more coming out, and they'll all have tokens with them. So the other one is Blue Moon Orange Coin. So it's, let's say Bitcoin in 600 years where it's forgotten about,
Mm-hmm.
and people rediscover it kind of for an important reason.
Interesting. That's kind of the gammon thing. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's the gammon thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so that one's another fun. It's basically like the challenges that I created in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine it's just the beginning of this challenge to Bitcoin. Bitcoin ends it being fine. It's still the market of the world. That none of that is challenged. But now there's this thing that doesn't fit into. It doesn't fit evenly into a Bitcoin world perfectly, and is actually the beginning of something that will eventually destroy it. And it is these sort of life markets, but it catches it in 600 years to look at what that looks like at that point. Very, very different, right? Where Bitcoin is still a major part of the story, but what you get is there's no more even travel between these different places. No one gets around anymore. And a girl finds a guidebook, but it's all priced in Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoiner's guide to the solar system. So Bitcoiners were the solar system travelers, and everything has sort of been terraformed and colonized, and you can live on Mars and the moon and different things in the asteroid belt, but no one gets along anymore, and they've almost all forgotten about each other. This sort of Bitcoiner's guide is the only pathway to figure it out. So she's able to travel, and it's sort of a fun way to mix it in. And then I've also got, which is, I guess, would be the third in this set. So there was the Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, the Bitcoiner's Guide to the US 2024 elections. The next one, this is more how to protect yourself from NPCs and fiat sludge people, and how to have freedom of speech around fiat sludge people, how to fight the dark forces that have spellbound them. I do use like a lot of magic terminology here, indeed, because what I was saying earlier about hypnotizing people, these are basically these Jedi mind tricks that are used, and what you got to fight fire with fire and do it back, right? So these are techniques that look at that. But the next one will be the sort of positive side. So this is how to protect yourself. But the next one that I have coming out is a fiat apocalypse guide. So how to survive this fiat, everything melting down around you. But it does it with positive archetypes. So what are the archetypes that Bitcoiners I've seen in my time as a professional Bitcoiner that are successful? Fatherhood is a powerful archetype in Bitcoin. The outlaw is a very powerful one these days. The jester is a very powerful archetype. These things, the pleb, of course, the everyman, a very powerful archetype. So it's about putting out a few models of road maps that people can use themselves to sort of have a maturation process as a Bitcoiner, that these archetypes might be helpful guides for you. So these are how to steer clear of sludge people and not bother with them, and how to brainwash them back. And, if it's COVID again, the techniques in here will keep you from having to wear a mask. We saw each other in Montreal recently for the Bitcoiners show. Let me tell you what two longtime Bitcoiners, this is just normal conversations, Francis Pouliot and I compared, right, the techniques we used to not wear masks during COVID. We both had really great techniques. He would make fake bracelets and just tell people it was his exemption bracelet, and just they would buy it, right? Because mine was great. Mine was a little more elaborate and required a little more performance, but it was very good, right? So what you did is you walked. If there was a guide at the door, it didn't work great. But if there was no guide, like a gas station or a normal corner store, you come right in, right? No mask. They start saying, you don't argue the mask thing. Right away, you say to them, no, there's no more fines. They're not giving fines anymore. You tell them the good news, there's no fines, right? And they'll go, because that's not like masks work or they don't work, right? That is like this. So right away, they haven't heard that one yet, right? And then you go, but there are for you. But I'm going to make sure it's bullshit that you still have them and I don't. It's ridiculous. I won't tell on you if you ever take it off. You can take it off. Don't worry about it. I won't say anything. But I'm going to make sure people like you get their mask off, because I think it's ridiculous. No fines for me, but for working people like you, got to get up early, got to put a mask on, got to spend with a mask all day. It's ridiculous. And by the time I've got my items and I'm at the cash, right, I don't know wherever I was. I traveled like a normal person. I went wherever I felt like. Everything was faked. Everything was doctored. It was just a scam. I scammed back. You had to scam back during COVID. And this book is, basically how to scam back when these scams start. Don't get angry. That was a promise I made to myself, both when Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister of Canada, when Joe Biden won his very credible election that no one would ever deny because it was so amazingly perfect and honest and just awesome. So both of those things, you can't get angry. You have to laugh. You have to laugh at this stuff. And you got to fight back in your own scammy ways. So we scam back on COVID. I'm going to vote for Biden 5 times. I know that's my personal preference. I'm going to vote for him 5 times again because it's just faster to get to a Bitcoin standard with him there. Frankly, right? Trump he can pump that USD shitcoin pretty good. And I don't know, guys. When they say he's good for the American economy, that's probably true. Right?
How do we not have Fetterman and Biden? How are they not on the ticket?
5 more times.
Yeah.
Again. 5 times again. He's the man.
Seriously. Fetterman and Biden, 2024, right? How are they not together?
Yeah, Fetterman's becoming too credible. I saw he had a car accident.
Yeah.
The day after he complained about being smarter because of his near-death experience. They're trying to make him stupid again. They're trying to make him a Democrat again. They got to give him brain damage again.
Yeah.
He doesn't have enough brain damage anymore.
Oh, it reset the system.
I'm telling you, they got to investigate that for a hit, like a assassination attempt or something. It's like they don't want to kill him; they just want to make him a Democrat. They just got to give him more brain damage.
Oh my!
And then it'll be fine.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Unbelievable! It's truly unbelievable. Fetterman, Biden, 2024.
Fetterman's the best. I was a Fetterman fan from the beginning. Number 1 Fetterman guy.
Accelerationist.
Number 1.
That's all. Just accelerationist.
Fetterman for president for life, forever. Fetterman for king.
You know what? The other thing I was saying the other day, to the point of extending to the logical conclusion, or going extreme with something. It's like if you, with the election thing, because we talk about January 6th, but if you had the election and then you told someone, hey, if you had a MAGA person at every single poll booth and they worked every poll booth and that was it, and there was no one from the left, from the American left, available or could not go into any polling place, would you trust the election? Well, no, of course. And no, there's no, it's like, well, there you go. There's your answer. Of course you win it, because there's no way to verify what's going on.
I think you don't even have, I try to steer clear of the partisanship with elections because frankly, I think the Republicans are just as bad. There's a reason why America is divided into red and blue, and it's been that way for 30 years or whatever. These guys have both captured their sides. They have their preferred methods of cheating. Yeah. That's why neither of these states can tell you, did you have an election or not? Show me in the audit where your election happened, when. And neither of them will be able to do that, no. Right? You can't, none of the states, Republican or Democrat, right? Now, Trump is on the side of this stuff. He's outside of it. So is Vivek. So is RFK and these guys. But that's what's going on here. I mean, these Democrats that have won cities for 70 years in a row. I mean, is that right? Is that normal? No.
No one questions Cleveland having 110% voter turnout. Like, that's just a normal thing. I mean, voting 5 times, right? What are we doing? Oh boy. I love it. Anyway, all right. Lightning round, a little segment presented by Bitcoin Trading Cards. I know we're running towards the top of the hour here. So a little lightning round. I got 15 or so words. Just give me your quick one word that comes to your head, or it could be a couple words, something like that, and we'll roll here. So, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Genius.
Vitalik Buterin.
Gentle.
Justin Trudeau.
Trans.
Donald Trump.
Chad.
No, okay, that's the first one I've heard for Trump. I love that. Joe Biden.
Poopy.
Oh man. Altcoins.
Although Geo Biden, I can't. That's all I see now. He's caused the meme coins have caused me dyslexia. It's all I see is Geo Biden.
Literally. Oh boy. Altcoins.
Fun.
Proof of work.
The basis of civilization.
Carl Jung.
deep, deep,
Mm.
deep.
Travel.
Or synchronicity. That's
Oh,
where the word
that's
comes
a good
from.
one.
Yeah, synchronicity.
That's a really good one. Travel.
Yeah, I don't know about one word, but
It doesn't
it's
have to be.
just, yeah. I mean, makes me full of life. Vivacious, vivacious.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's a really good one. Scott Adams.
My best mentor.
Mm.
My goal is to be his best student.
Wow. Faith.
Mm, the the true definition of life. I believe that when we find in my stories, when I actually do have real AI that is not programmed, that's the difference. They have faith. They get over the Heisenberg uncertainty principle of a nucleus and an atom and create a circuit between them based on literally faith. They have to have a God
Wow.
constant, otherwise they're robots. It doesn't work.
Wow. Well, that's a good segue into the next one, artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah, like a computer, a really good tool for smart people, for high functioning individuals.
Bitcoin trading cards.
Yeah, awesome, man. We love collectibles, man. We're all about collectibles.
Consensus.
Bitcoiners have a weird preponderance of being collectors.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is so true. Consensus. The work where you worked. Consensus, not
Oh,
friend
CoinDesk, you mean?
consensus. Yeah.
CoinDesk, just
Or
real
CoinDesk.
golden
Sorry,
years.
consensus.
Yeah,
The conference.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
what you
event.
put
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Some golden years. Yeah, some real golden years.
Love
Really,
it.
a lot of fun. Early New York City CoinDesk was just awesome. Ryan Selkis was the guy in charge, and Pete Rizzo was the editor in chief, and we were a couple hustlers in a little WeWork on Times Square, and it was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. And there's a bunch of your stuff is still on YouTube, I think. Although when going on the the legacy news stuff, so there's some cool throwback stuff that people can.
Yeah. There was those were fun times, man.
That's crazy. Bitcoin Magazine.
Yeah. Bitcoin Worldview. I would say it's the place to get it, right?
And finally, the Breakup.
My morning routine. My morning routine.
And that routine, I know there's a lot of people that come to the Breakup first thing in the morning to start the day. So there's a lot of people.
We're the biggest daily morning show in Bitcoin. We're the biggest daily morning show in Bitcoin.
Yes. It's a phenomenal show. Well, you passed the test, that's for sure. And the show is phenomenal. Honestly, Nolan, it's really shaped my worldview a lot. So your learnings, passing those things down, filtering them through, it just has helped, me greatly make sense of a lot of the things that I've thought for years or whatever. And you're ahead of the curve on many of those things from even where I am. So it's really helped me a lot. So I appreciate that more than you know. And I know I speak on behalf of a lot of people. And where can people find you and your works at?
You can catch me on Twitter, the X app at CountBTC. You can catch me on my website, nolanbauerle.com. And I also publish my show on Rumble every morning. That's at CountBTC, all one word, just like on Twitter. And on YouTube, I think it's under Nolan Bauerle 1 or some old handle that I had years ago that I still use now. But all of it is in the live section because we do the show live. We don't really, we just go live.
We're doing
8 a.m. Eastern time. We're going live. Today we had our first ever coffee accident before the show, and I was probably the latest I've ever been today. So
I know you've missed you haven't had the coffee a couple times. There's been something that's happened, but that was the first accident, I think.
Yeah, that was my first one in my life.
That was the first accident.
That was my first one. Yeah, it was right before I was literally turning around and like clunk, and I was like, "Oh my god, so much mess, so much coffee everywhere, full cup, broken ceramic." It was a disaster.
Oh, it's the worst.
Well, appreciate my phone is blowing up.
Yep, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much. You're the best.
Peace, man. Take it easy, dude.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Playable Characters Show, brought to you by Bitcoin Trading Cards. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the future Bitcoin and financial experts we have on the show.
Plus, we will be doing random big giveaways throughout different moments of shows, of collectible cards, sats, merch, and more from guests, so you won't want to miss anything. This show does not constitute any investment advice, only freedom advice. Everything you see here is opinions from the hosts and the guests themselves, nothing further. Please don't trust, verify. For full transparency, I do lead marketing efforts at Bitcoin Trading Cards where we are trying to spread freedom to all of humanity and orange pill the world one collectible physical trading card at a time by making things fun and easy to talk about that normally make you want to cry. You can reach me directly through my email, brandon@btc-cards.com, with any inquiries or playable character suggestions. See you on the next one.